You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com.
Hello, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast. This is episode 6. My name is Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor to TVObsessive.com. And as always, I'm here with Uncle Baby Cameron Crane, executive editor of the site. Cameron, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I do have one quick question for you before we get started. I know this is
right.
not TV related, but are you going to see Barbie or Oppenheimer this weekend?
It's pretty unlikely. I don't make it out to see a lot of films. I know everyone in the world is talking about it. Yourself?
I have tickets for Oppenheimer, not Barbie yet, but I have tickets for Oppenheimer, and I have splurged for the IMAX tickets as I was instructed to by Christopher Nolan. So we'll see how it is.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the films, it's a very weird thing that it's become this whole marketing thing somehow of people doing a double bill. That doesn't seem to fit at all. Like they seem to be like, so it's a joke but it's really taken on a lot of momentum. I'm actually really almost more curious about Barbie. But we'll see. I don't think I'll see them eventually. Maybe.
I'll eventually see both of them. But yeah, both of my teens want to see Barbie. So eventually we'll get to that. But Oppenheimer was first on my list, so we'll see. Sunday night I'll be going, and we'll let you know.
Sounds good. So you like Christopher Nolan films? What's your favorite Christopher Nolan film?
I do like Christopher Nolan films. Being a comic book nerd, I am beholden to the Batman movies and the Dark Knight Rises being some of the best that I've ever seen. So yeah, that Heath Ledger performance in that movie is just sort of transcendent for me. So I've always been a big fan of those. How about you? Any of his favorites you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, The Dark Knight Rises. I did not like.
Yeah, the third film,
yeah,
the
third one, but the second one was quite. And I like Batman Begins quite a lot too. So I was really rather disappointed. I saw The Dark Knight Rises in IMAX when it came out, and yeah, it was disappointed. But I would probably, if you put me on the spot, I'd probably go all the way back to Memento.
Oh yeah, love Memento. Yeah. Speaking of double features, I want to say The Dark Knight and Mamma Mia came out on the same day. If you want to talk about two very different movies coming out on the same weekend. Anyway, we're here to talk about TV. So,
yes.
Anything going on this week that you noticed?
Well, we're looking at the news, and we have ongoing strike of WGA and SAG-AFTRA. We're recording this, which, by the way, if anything happens over the weekend, we're recording this a little bit early. We'll put it out early next week. I noticed recently some things with fall lineups. There have been some adjustments. NBC isn't doing any of the Dick Wolf shows. I don't know what all that consists. It's not just Law and Order, but also like Chicago Fire and stuff like that. I don't watch these shows. You watch these shows?
Yeah, they've got a whole Chicago night, if I remember correctly, and they're not going to do any of those.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I mean, I guess they have them on the schedule and they're being optimistic or something. And I also saw that CBS is apparently going to take some things that had been exclusive to the streaming service, only on Paramount Plus, and they're going to put them on the linear network. Like Yellowstone apparently is going to air with some edits because there's profanity and such in Yellowstone. So that's interesting. And I guess they're like throwing on the UK version of Ghosts, which there's an American version that's been on CBS. And some stuff like that. So we'll see. I mean, it's just we're already seeing, at least with the major networks, how the fall TV schedule is going to be kind of weird. I mean, like we're not going to see that traditional big fall TV lineup. It's going to be reruns and weird things like this, taking a streaming show and putting it on the linear network, and game shows in primetime, and reality TV, Dancing with the Stars, and extended long versions of Survivor and The Amazing Race.
I would assume at some point as well, the streamers are going to run out of content. They've got weeks and months of material planned out, but eventually, if this strike goes on long enough, they're going to run out of material, as nothing is really filming right now.
Right. I mean, more news about things being delayed, which of course at this point is no surprise. I mean, did you know Andor was filming? Because apparently that's delayed now.
That's right. I did see that. Yes, a show I love that is halted along with many, many, many other things, as you said.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's no surprise. Probably, most things are going to be shut down, given the fact that the unions are on strike. And so we'll see. I mean, things that are entirely cast with equity writers in the UK union will be able to proceed, or almost
Yeah.
have to proceed. And I was reading about this a little bit. The equity, which I guess that is all that it's called. It's like called Equity UK. Those actors would actually be in violation of their contract if they walked out in solidarity and it's all legal mess or what have you. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that British TV might plug on, but
Yeah. We can go find our content there, I guess. Well, speaking of streamers, there was a couple of other things that jumped out to me this week. Number one, this was a story a few months ago. Netflix was going to start cracking down on password sharing. They were really going to start trying to get these isolated individual accounts for people that had not had those. So apparently in their earnings call, they told investors that they have gained 5.6 million subscribers in the last quarter. And but as you noted, for some reason that caused the stock price to go down. I'm sure there are other factors as well, but
well,
there's some interesting news there.
actually, yeah, I think the stock price went down because of the thing you were just referring to. They're like, we don't have any content, what I mean?
Exactly.
Like they give their report and it's kind of like, what do you have coming up? Like, so I don't know. I'm not a Wall Street guy or anything like that. So, but I think it was more that than like they were giving their overall kind of report the other day,
Yeah.
whatever that is. But yeah, I mean the password sharing thing. I don't know what you think about that. It's kind of funny. Like so, yeah, I guess it sort of worked. Which yeah, when they were doing it, I saw all sorts of people complaining. I
Yeah.
think legitimately, you know, and particularly in terms of how they did it. And it was apparently making it difficult for people to use their Netflix when they were traveling and stuff like
Yeah.
this. So a lot of people were complaining about it, but it looks like, I guess, at the end of the day, that move kind of worked out for them. I also read that I guess they're getting rid of one of their tiers in their pricing plan. You see this, or they're going to try to push everyone to either the cheaper plan that shows you ads,
Yeah.
or the more expensive standard plan.
Where you can have more accounts on or more profiles on one account. Yeah, so sort of the heightened
Whatever, yeah.
individual plan or the pay less, but you're gonna get the ads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one they're getting rid of maybe wasn't that popular anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is the one like you didn't get HD or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it was super popular, but it's interesting. And that too. We're talking about residuals. You mentioned something about Mandy Moore, and there've been various people with low residuals. The advertisements on streaming too is kind of an interesting wrinkle to
Hmm.
the negotiations, insofar as there are, as I understand it, contractual things related to advertisement in traditional broadcast television, and then not with streaming.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah,
It,
there's a lot of issues there. I think what Cameron's referencing is Mandy Moore spoke to a Hollywood Reporter and showed them a check for a penny and a check for 81 cents for residuals for This Is Us, a very popular show, but even the headlining stars got next to nothing in terms of the streaming platform for those.
yeah, in terms of the residuals, right? I mean, to be clear, if people
Yeah.
don't understand somehow, maybe they don't. No judgment, right? But like so, the like Bandy Moore would get paid for the filming, and then you've got the back end of actors getting residuals, which on the old model, involved things going into syndication and all of that kind of thing. And with streaming, which we live in the age of streaming, apparently their residuals are really quite small. I don't know if that surprises people or
Yeah.
not, but
Well, speaking of the streamers, there was there were some announcements made, at least when there was new content coming out, about the things that have been most watched, at least at the end of June, on the streaming networks.
Yeah, what do we got?
Number one, they gave us a top five. Number one was Black Mirror, and I guess that's to be expected, very anticipated. I don't know that it met the expectations in terms of critical review that Netflix was hoping for, but it got a lot of eyeballs on that. And then number two, which we covered, was The Bear. Those two were the top, far and away, the top two streaming options at the end of June. And then Netflix had the next two, a show I'd never heard of before called The Surrogacy, and then a show called Manifest, which was an NBC show. I actually watched the first season of that. It was quite interesting, about a thought to be lost plane that returns 5 years later, and mysteriously people don't understand what happened to them. And then followed in fifth place by Secret Invasion, which again I'll have my thoughts on in full next week on the site after that ends.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Surrogacy either. Manifest was one of those that got canceled and then picked up, had a big fan base and all of that. So not terribly surprising. It's somewhat heartening to see that if the Bear is on that list.
You know, you and I talked about, we got those emails from the publicity team about, how many hours of views they got, how much more they got in terms of viewership compared to last year. But one thing I thought stood out in this article here that looked at the top streamers was over 2/3 of the viewers were in that critical age 18 to 49 range. And so this is right in the spot of what they were hoping for. And I guess with all the going on is why we haven't heard about a season 3 of The Bear. But I mean, it's whenever they can lock these things in, I think it's a done deal at this point.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I'm just saying, I'm heartened by seeing, a list of top streaming shows and seeing something on there that I think is one of the, best written, best directed, best acted, just like high quality shows that has been released, as opposed to it all being I don't know, not that. Let's sort it that way. All right.
You don't want 5 Love Islands on there for
well, yeah. I realized, like, I don't want to start giving examples where I'm clearly looking down my nose at whatever would be an example. It might come across like that, but hopefully people kind of know what I mean. That if the studios are out there thinking, oh, well, we can just use Chat GPT to put out, passable schlock and people will watch it. Like, well, pay attention to the fact that, like, your top on the list is something that is really, really well crafted and deeply human. So,
well, in our last episode, you mentioned something we didn't have a chance to get to that you were watching right now. Just for transition to some of the things we're watching these days. You mentioned a show that I'm interested in but haven't seen yet. Do you want to talk about Foundation for a second?
Yeah, we can do that a little bit. So you haven't watched it at all?
I haven't seen it yet.
You're aware of what it is, based on the Isaac Asimov series of books and so on.
Yeah.
And I think Apple TV's put a lot of money into this. I haven't looked up numbers. It's not really my tendency to like care about the numbers, but I mean, it's clearly like an expensive show, is well produced and all of that. It's kind of interesting. Certainly there are book readers who have gripes. I'm not one of them because I haven't read the books. But I mean, this is like classic, science fiction.
Yeah.
So I can certainly understand that. And they've clearly taken some liberties in terms of the adaptation, which I generally find with. It's interesting, like maybe my favorite part of the show apparently isn't in the books at all.
Huh.
Which they have this genetic dynasty. But I mean, it's at least fun. It's at least well produced and well acted.
Yeah.
And well put together. Lee Pace and Jared Harris are kind of standouts to me in terms of actors. So, if I'm recommending the show to anyone. But yeah, the second season just started, and actually the second episode of the second season just came out. Unfortunately, I did read they were filming season 3, and that got shut down, like everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me ask you, because we've talked briefly in past episodes about Silo. So with Silo and Foundation and Severance, Apple TV has got sort of this little market cornered on with some strong science fiction. Have you been generally a fan of what they've been putting out in that genre?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I think it's fair to put Severance in science fiction.
Yeah.
That's not unfair. I would definitely. I tend to think that's a cut above a lot of this other stuff. I haven't gotten around to watching For All Mankind. Some people really rave about that one,
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
which is over, and I haven't seen that one. But yeah, you've got Foundation, you've got Silo, you have Invasion.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
another season coming out of in August. I'm kind of on the fence of whether to write about it. I wrote episode by episode in season one, and it was one of these things where like halfway through the season, um, I started being like really negative. So and then the season ends, and it was like, oh, but I kind of want to see what happens. So I don't know. I'll probably watch it. I don't know how many things of these things you've seen. I guess I have the feeling I think it's really cool that Apple TV is doing all this sci-fi
Yeah.
because I'm a fan of sci-fi. But at least for me, being a fan of science fiction, television, and film has always meant um like continually being at least a little bit disappointed, but liking it anyway. At least
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
like there aren't that
Yeah.
many things that really stand out where I'm like, oh yes, they really did it, because it feels like in one way or another they always kind of don't. I don't know, just don't do it as well as they do in written form.
Yeah. No, I generally, you and I are the same way. We're both fans of the genre, certainly fans of science fiction. And we've talked about this. Apple has the money to spend to make sure these things are at least a certain baseline of quality. And even when it doesn't meet all the expectations, it's still good because it's still strong stories within science fiction. And generally the things I've liked, having completed Severance and Silo, at least the seasons that exist so far, I've really enjoyed those. I might have to check out these other ones soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are worth watching. I'm not sure if Invasion is worth watching. I don't mean I don't know. Someone commented on one of my recaps that told me I did not understand Invasion, so I don't know if I should keep writing on it because apparently I'm not appealing to the fan base that's out there. But yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, I
Well,
guess my problem is I always want the science fiction to really kind of follow the premise
yeah.
and to the interesting places, and there can definitely be a tendency for it to be like, well, we've got the science fiction premise, we've got the science fiction show, but then really it's a love story
Yeah.
or really it's an action story. And they're like, I want them to follow the premise. And maybe that's just me, kind of anyhow.
Yeah. Well, let me take us a little bit more lowbrow, if you'll allow me to, for a second. Now, you and I are generally the same age, and I'm going to make a prediction that when you were growing up in the early '90s, if you were like me, on Sunday nights, you sat in front of your TV and you watched American Gladiators. Is this true or not true?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely saw, and they would they beat each other with the sticks that have like
Yeah, the joust. Yeah.
yeah, but they had like big foam things on the end of them.
Yeah. So I don't know if
Um,
you've seen this. A friend of mine turned me on to this. So there is a 5-part documentary on Netflix now called Muscles and Mayhem, the unauthorized story of American Gladiators. And I'm about 2.5 episodes in so far. And it is fascinating because of you, as you might expect, you wouldn't have thought this watching it when you were 12 or 13 years old, but as you might expect, there was some pretty shady stuff going on behind the scenes with people in the early '90s with these sort of muscle bound ripped folks who had no oversight, no guidance, no medical attention paid to them. So it's a pretty fascinating look at that show if you're a child of the '90s and enjoyed the American Gladiators. It's funny. It's depressing in times because it looks at what some of that show did to people, and some of the injuries and some of the things that happened to them. But I found it quite interesting. It's something that I grew up with. It was appointment viewing in my house on Sunday nights growing up.
yeah, that's interesting. And so there's exploitation in the background
Oh
or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, exploitation. I mean, finding washed out athletes and bodybuilders who were looking for any kind of work and forcing them to film
Yeah.
episodes for no page to see if the show would work, and then injuries and steroid use and then what happens when they all become celebrities overnight. It's pretty interesting.
That does sound fascinating. It also makes me kind of want now like an expose of Double Dare.
Yeah, that would be great.
Let's
That's what we
go
need
behind the
here.
scenes.
The companion series to this will be a Double Dare documentary.
Those are
Yeah,
the days.
yeah.
Do they? Maybe they do make shows like this, and I'm just not paying attention. But there was definitely that period where they were doing some weird stuff.
Yeah, the '90s were a weird time, my friend.
You know, they were.
They were there. Anyway, I'm beyond that. I'm still following Secret Invasion. I'm catching up, as you know, on Righteous Gemstones, which we're about to talk about. So yeah, got a few things on the plate, but I'm ready to go back to the Gemstone family if you are.
All right, well, let's do it. So, to let everyone know, on this episode of the podcast, we're going to dig in on the Righteous Gemstones season 2. So in what follows, spoilers are on the table through season 2. I mean, season 1 also, right? I mean, but we'll avoid getting into season 3, with our plan being to pick up with that next week as season 3 is coming to a close, and we'll talk about season 3. Okay. So we'll take a couple of seconds here and I'll pop in a little bit of music, what have you. And then on the other side, we will talk about the Righteous Gemstone season 2.
Okay, we are back ready to talk about the Gemstone family, Righteous Gemstones, season 2. We are, as Cameron mentioned, in the middle of season 3 right now, but we're going to go specifically now through season 2. So once again, spoiler alert for anything in season 1, which we covered in our last episode, or season 2 of the Righteous Gemstones. So Cameron, let me just recap this with a little plot summary of season 2, just so we can sort of get our bearing here, and then we'll talk through some of these storylines. Celebrity televangelist Eli Gemstones, we know is played by John Goodman, continues to try to keep his emotionally stunted children, Jesse, Judy, and Kelvin, in check. Their big money mega church afloat, while the family finds themselves threatened by outsiders from both the past, we'll talk about Memphis and Eli's former wrestling days, and the present. We go down to Texas and meet the Listens, who want to open Zion's Landing. They all wish to destroy their empire. Uncle Baby Billy runs away from the responsibility of a child, but eventually is convinced to return to make things right for the child he has on the way. So we've left sort of the blackmail and extortion storyline from season 1. We saw Jesse and Gideon reconcile at the end of season 1, beginning of episode 1 of season 2. And so now we have the Gemstones facing some interesting history from Eli back when he was a small time thug, I guess, in Memphis, and also these popular young preachers down in Texas trying to get some money out of them to start a Christians only beach resort. So there's your season 2 summary. You recently went back and reviewed some of this. So what's your thoughts on season 2?
Well, I mean, the big thing that stands out, of course, you're given the general kind of plot summary you're reading from there, which I think is kind of, purposefully avoiding some spoilers. But the big thing is Jason Schwartzman's character, Daniel, right? and I mean, one of the things, I mean, I feel like the spoiler warning is more important for season 2 than it was for season 1. Yeah. Because season 2 has a real mystery to it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was really surprised when in episode 2 of the season, this guy dies. They find him dead and all of this, because I thought they were kind of setting up something where it was going to be like he was putting pressure on the Gemstone Church. He's threatening to expose past transgressions of whatever kind. Keeps invoking Amy Lee like she did something bad, and boom, he's dead, Yeah. But I mean, I thought this season was great because it was structured around a couple of mysteries that they end up having the same solution. But as I went through the whole season, I didn't see how that was going to come together. I thought maybe these are separate things, right? Because you've got what happened to Jason Schwartzman's character, Nathaniel. This great, I love the trope, like the Brooklyn New Yorker, he's like smoking on the porch and the guy comes along and we don't take kindly to your type. But what happened to him and the slapstick when they find him. I don't know. There's so much great stuff in the season. But then you also have the cycle ninjas, right? They're like trying to kill Eli and all of this. Um, I don't know what stands out to you here.
Yeah, I will say I was sort of hooked on the red herring that was the Memphis background and the people from Memphis, and was sure that that would be the in some way connected to Thaniel Block's death there as he's investigating some of these megachurch preachers. And clearly, if you've seen it, it turns out that no, that was the Texas group, the Listens, that were responsible for that murder. But no, I was caught up in the history and how that would be connected to that murder. But you're right. I did enjoy the mystery of it. We talked in our last episode about how the fact that Gideon was caught up in the extortion blackmail in season 1 came relatively early. So it was just a matter of how does that get resolved. This was a mystery that lasted literally until the last episode, and kind of kept you guessing in that way. And I was not on the speculation that would have been the folks from Texas all along.
Well, I mean, look, if anyone called that it was the Listens who threw grenades into Daniel's place and caused him to start firing his gun that ricocheted, and the bullet from his own gun killed him. Like, if anyone had called that, I mean, I wouldn't even believe it.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, something got leaked to you. But I was with you. I mean, in the whole storyline, though, with Junior, played wonderfully by Eric Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
I kept thinking, oh, well, did Junior and Eli go kill that reporter?
Yeah.
And then alternately was thinking, like, wait, is Junior behind the threat against Eli? But it doesn't quite hold up. The best he can muster is, as I was reading Hawk's recap of the episode, he refers to the guy Junior sends to threaten Eli at one point. He refers to him as Dollar Tree Hulk Hogan. But it is like, yeah, and then you turn around, he's getting attacked by these cycle ninjas. It never quite fit, but I don't know. What did you think of the Listens and that reveal that ultimately they were behind all this stuff?
Yeah, I guess thinking back on it, you sort of wonder all along, okay, why are these people really here? Obviously, we had this storyline that they were following with this group of, and invest with us. We want to try to, this is Jesse and Amber, that are trying to become best friends with this young, hot mega church pastor the family that Listens down in Texas. And so they're trying to get them to invest in this Zion's Landing resort. And they want to do that because they show that they've got some power and that they're in charge, and they can make some decisions apart from their father. And so I guess it was just sort of this, just kind of a B storyline. We'll just follow along the way. But no, it did turn out that it was integrally related to what the mystery was all along. So I enjoyed that, and not least of which because of the sort of the Texas tropes and Texas stereotypes that were there. But yeah, never would I have guessed that was connected in any way to this sort of expose in general that was being done by this reporter trying to draw all these megachurch pastors out into the light, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the big missing link. Eli was standing in the way of the deal, right? Eli wouldn't let Jesse and Amber go through with it. So, but the way the Listens were portrayed, I guess I also never quite saw them as being the ones who are going to be behind like radical violence, as it were. I don't know. You mentioned the portrayals and Texas stereotypes. You're from Texas. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there were some interesting ones there. Just number one, we don't all walk around in cowboy gear all the time. I know that that's a common trope out there, that this is what happens. There are people that do, but that's not what happens here. We do all carry guns, present company excluded, but we do all have guns. Part is true. We do go to a lot of axe throwing places. We saw them go there with the gemstones at one point in the season. That's exploded here in Texas. But no, the thing is probably the least true is they would have used that money to try to start a resort here in Texas. Texas people are not starting things outside of their own state. They're loyal, so they'd go down to Galveston or Corpus Christi or South Padre Island and try to
Yeah,
do the resort there. So
yeah, that makes, because in the show it's in Florida, I think, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, you're right. They would have stayed on their own Gulf Coast, presumably.
Exactly. Third coast, best coast.
You ever go down to the South Padre Island and stuff like that?
This is where I grew up, was on that coast. So
Oh
I
yeah.
have to represent it. Yeah, yeah. No, it was interesting to see. I mean, I thought the first season of Righteous Gemstones, we eventually learn that they're in South Carolina, I believe. But that's not shoved in your face. It's kind of meant to represent, I think, the South in general. Obviously, we talk about some things that happens in Atlanta, that they're in South Carolina. This group is in Texas. So yeah, this is a real, I think, piercing look at what is important and what is maybe some of the things that are obsessed over here in the South, and a lot of that is true. But I think it's a pretty interesting and funny representation of sort of our Southern culture here.
Yeah, so let's talk about the wrestling thing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I thought it was great. We get this sort of background with Eli. As I recall, the season opens with this. And we find out, because we know this from season one, we find out that, as you mentioned, he was, as a younger man, in the employ of some, I don't know how to refer to them, basically criminals in Memphis, right?
Yeah.
But also, more significantly in my mind, he was a wrestler.
He was a wrestler. Yep.
What do you think about this line of Eli Gemstone? Because ultimately he moves from the kind of show that is wrestling, pro wrestling, like WWF, WWE. Not that he was at that big of a scale, but a similar kind of thing where it's choreographed to whatever degree, right? In terms of indie wrestling. What do you think of that move of his character from the wrestling scene to the TV evangelism scene? Because I felt like they played with something there that was kind of interesting.
I think that there was some very intentional placement of both of those things in this story, right? This idea that there are parts of it that are entertainment, there are parts of it that are certainly staged and choreographed. There are parts where you have to improvise and parts where you have to be yourself, but been both wrestling at many levels and sort of this highest level of this, as you talked about last week, prosperity gospel, mega church, famous pastor. You have to be more entertainer than you have to be spiritual leader. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I really saw the parallels there between all that's choreographed in terms of wrestling and all that you have to choreograph and really push in terms of an agenda when you might be in a position like Eli Gemstone or Jesse Gemstone.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think they play with then the question of, how genuine his ministry is.
Yes,
which I think one of the things I love about the show is that's always an ambiguous question. It's at least never pushed to the level of you thinking, oh no, he's just cynically in it for money, or whatever. It's always at most kind of ambiguous. And in some moments, honestly, I find myself really believing that he does believe in what he's doing.
I agree. And frankly, we saw a small slice of what his home life was like when he got into this wrestling world, into this sort of criminal world that he was drug into by Junior and by Junior's dad. And it seemed to be not just a conservative household, but one that was conservative, bordering on, abusive, verbally and physically and otherwise. Certainly something where they were, they had their own version of religion and spirituality in that household, but he was pushed away from it, perhaps by his family. And it took someone like Amy Lee, who we understand to be a real, just someone who was authentic and genuine and a true believer in what she thought was right, to bring him back to that world, whereas the family had apparently pushed him away from it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And then interestingly, the ultimate story with all the Junior stuff and the backstory doesn't tie into Nathaniel's death and everything, but that we learned that it was the fact that Eli refused to launder money for Junior's father
Yep.
whose name I'm blanking on right now. I apologize. But and that led to Eli's father, right? Because that was Eli's father, right? Eli's father killing Junior's father
Yes.
in his dementia.
Yeah,
Not
yes.
people. I'm presuming people have watched this, but to remind you,
Yeah.
because there's kind of a lot that goes on here. It hasn't been terribly long since season 2 came out, but there's a lot of ins and a lot of outs.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Roy Gemstone, the father, wanders around the property often at nights and his with his shotgun and his underwear, and just happens upon Eli's dad one night after a confrontation and just ends him right there.
yeah. So and then they bury he's underneath the roller coaster that Eli's riding. So there's some really great stuff there, I think, all around. What got me going on that thread was how here you have Eli it's in the interlude episode, I guess. You have Eli ultimately saying no to this kind of uh, taint on he's not going to take the dirty money to do what they want to do, and what in one way or another they proceed to do, which is expand the
Yeah.
gemstone enterprise into the kind of mega church that it becomes. So you have indications like that show that he does have some kind of integrity, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that integrity is authentic. We talked last time about how much of an influence Amy Lee was on that. She was a moral compass for this family. She was a real, she believed authentically in what she was trying to, even as the church grew, what they were trying to do and what their role as a family was in that. And I think you can see her influence on him, not only when she was there, but as we talked about last time, long after she's gone, that he's still trying to pull himself, even though his family is harder, pull himself into this, this real moral position, even though he has to fight the past to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really tempted to pull in something from season 3 now, and I'm going to refrain. I'm just going to note that if anyone listening is also watching, yes, I'm thinking about that too. A couple other things we still need to talk about Uncle Baby Billy and his son Harmon, who we see in the interlude he abandons. But then the performance of Harmon as an adult, this is standout to me. This is Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin, yep.
I know this is great.
Yeah, great in terms of it was almost robotic and unemotional, and all I want to do is hit you as hard as I can in the face one time and we're done and we're good. Maybe sort of a portrayal of what it does to a child if you were to just abandon them like that. But whether one side or the other, Macaulay Culkin's character as Harmon as an adult has zero emotion, zero connection, zero seems ability to empathize. And I just thought it was an interesting reflection on this is what can happen if you abandon a child, if you leave them in that position. And as much as we talked about fathers and sons in the last episode, just was a sort of a continuation of that.
Yeah, and I thought it was great. I mean, there's a realism to it, as it were, but also, I don't know, just thematically and in terms of what the show is, you didn't get a reunion, you didn't get forgiveness from Harmon. And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like if we're playing with those types of themes, because I think the show does constantly play with what I would call Christian themes, like forgiveness, that it's not deserved.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to, spin out on a conceptual level rant. I'm tempted to say it's about forgiveness in general. It's not something that you earn. But regardless if Harmon had forgiven him or something, okay. But I think the way that they played it shows how in real life, the much more likely result would be something like this, not some moment of reconciliation with your long lost father who abandoned you in a pet store when you were a kid.
Right.
But fundamentally, Harmon doesn't want to talk to him at all.
Right. And why should he, frankly? Harmon has had essentially his whole life without this man there. What purpose does it serve? What good does it do to try in a 5-minute conversation to try to do something to reconcile that, much less go to the point where you're talking about giving forgiveness. That's just reality. I mean, you spent 30 plus years without that man in your life. What incentive or motivation do you have to try to incorporate him into that right away?
Yeah, and then you think, well, maybe it'd be kind of satisfying to punch him in the face. You know, so like he goes. Now, I do need to note here, Ryan, and I think it's really quick at the end of the season. I believe they do show Harmon in the congregation of the church in a shot, but some have speculated this might be hallucination or something. I don't know. It's a dubious reality.
Yeah, no, I don't know what really to think about that, because I didn't know what you're saying there, but not sure at this point. I guess we're left open ended intentionally. How to consider that?
Yeah, I mean it's because I don't know. The thing is, the show does none of the work to really make that happen, and there are ways in which it plays that make it seem as though perhaps it's more Baby Billy imagining Harmon there than him actually being there. And I don't know. I just felt the need to note that is there, but I don't think we can put a lot of weight on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think what the weight that rests on Baby Billy's shoulders ends up being what it eventually forced him to do, which is return to Tiffany to say, okay, I won't make this mistake again. I will go back and be a father to this child that's not yet born, and realize there was a massive mistake made, and I at least am not going to make that again.
Right, because he's abandoned his pregnant wife. Now I recall, as I was watching the season week to week, speculating that he was going after Harmon. But he gets sidetracked selling elixirs or whatever. He's afraid. He finally has some like vision of Amy Lee and goes, that's the other thing. He has the vision of Amy Lee and so on. There's some seeds planted of possible, Billy visions or what have you. But yeah, that he returns to Tiffany and her toilet baby Lionel.
Yeah, I mean, there's some one-liners in this show. There are some just brief shots in this show. I just think I would have never thought I would see something like this on my TV screen, and particularly when he pulls his brand new baby out of the blue toilet, porta potty water. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's like certainly is the freeze frame of the season, I must say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got another contender.
Okay.
So we'll get to that in 1 minute, but let me say first, that there is also that through line, which I think is very nice in the season with Tiffany and Judy, and they kind of bond and so on. And, they're going to put Tiffany on a bus at one point, and like they can't do that.
Yeah.
It's also just hilarious to me how they call her Aunt Tiffany, which is accurate, but I'm like, I think she's younger than them. Or
yes, absolutely.
Maybe the same. No, absolutely. the other contender for me for like screen grab of the season is BJ at his baptism in his glorious romper.
Oh boy, the BJ romper, yeah, the pink bow tie romper,
the cummerbund.
I almost watched that whole scene, through my fingers, right? Because of this, just the cringiness of his family versus the Gemstones versus Judy. Just, I mean, pushing him to where he doesn't want to go, but ends up, he wants to be on the good side of that family, and so will just turn his back on these people that clearly still love him and care for him and his own family. But man, BJ, and there's some things to come in season 3 as well. I mean, my goodness, that I just that character just makes me laugh. One of those characters that makes you laugh when you see him before he even does anything or says anything, just makes you laugh.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like that whole scene where he's wearing the cummerbund, I was laughing so hard that I had to like pause, and like catch my breath and stuff, like just from seeing him kind of like walking down the aisle in his cummerbund. I'm a big fan of BJ.
On another one that I thought was great with BJ, and the actor's name is escaping me at the moment, but he watch him coming out of the baptism again. His face, his mannerisms, what he does when he's coming out of that water. I mean, he looks like, like a toddler would look when you're trying to drag him out of the bath by one arm or something. I mean, it's just classic facial acting, and just so funny. He does an incredible job. I mean, he's climbing the ranks. One of my favorite characters on the show.
Yeah, me too. And it's Tim Baltz, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Give him good credit.
He gets these great little lines too. Like one of the ones that stands out to me in season 2 is he saw Eli riding the roller coaster when he was out rollerblading to stay swole. It's just out of me take credit for that.
I can't thank you enough for recommending this show to me. I was so reluctant and no interest in the beginning, and I'm just falling in love with it. It's a really strong show in terms of the humor, and as we mentioned last week, some of the emotion and heart behind it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see that you're enjoying it, and yeah, I mean, it's been out there for me as something where it's way better than I expected it to be before it came out. I was kind of curious when it came out, which is in 2019, I think, right?
2019 now. Yep.
Yeah, this one that got delayed a bit in its production schedule, so unfortunately that might happen again here. But hopefully it does get renewed. Hopefully they keep making more, and we've still got a little bit left of season 3.
I think one episode this Sunday, which would be the 23rd of July, and then 2 more to finish season 3 on July 30th.
Yeah, they're finishing with 2, which I don't know how I feel about that, but that's what they're doing.
I love the 1-to-1, but who knows what their internal scheduling is doing that for.
Yeah, I don't know. They're starting Winning Time the week after that. I know that.
Maybe that's
so,
it. They need an hour block. And notice I've not referenced this entire episode whether or not this is an HBO or Max show, because I have no idea, nor will I be guessing. I have no clue.
It's an HBO show.
Okay.
It airs on HBO.
Got it.
I mean, I think part of why people are confused is because are you watching things on the linear cable network?
Yeah.
And the only reason I keep it clear is because I don't know. I had a PR rep tell me rather sternly when HBO Max launched that it was not HBO, though it's changed now. They have gotten more kind of fused together in a certain way, but at least at the beginning, it was like they had one set of press reps for HBO and they had another set for HBO Max.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And now they've kind of fused the brands a little bit more, and in some ways, I do think that in some ways, I think going to just Max might, in the long run, clarify this for people a little bit, but perhaps not, because so far it seems like people think HBO stopped existing, which is I don't think what they wanted. It's not true.
No.
Yeah.
Well, what do you expect when you remove the most valuable piece of the branding from the streamer? I mean, what you get what you ask for.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that they really did some confusing things with the branding. Because when they launched HBO Max, people at HBO were insistent, like, that's not HBO.
Right.
That's HBO plus a whole bunch of other stuff to make the streaming service. And if they make HBO Max original shows, those aren't the HBO brand. I got the feeling that people at HBO were trying to fight for the purity of the HBO brand.
I see. Okay.
I don't know. I'm speculating a little bit.
Yeah.
But now when they change HBO Max to simply Max, people think, oh, does this mean HBO doesn't exist anymore?
Right.
And no, HBO is the linear cable network and its production side and so on. But they've really been doing all kinds of crazy stuff with that company. So
yeah. Yep. Well, all I know is wherever it's housed or wherever it's streaming, I'm going to keep watching this show. We're going to spend one more week on it, talking about episode 3 by the time we record again. Season 3. Season 3 will be over. The 9 episodes of this 3rd season will be completed, and we'll finish that one up next week. Any more Righteous Gemstones thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, I think that about does it. I wanted to hit you with a zinger or something. I do feel like we haven't talked about Judy enough, so I'm just going to mention that Judy is great.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh, there's some good Judy stuff in season 3, so we'll make a point
yeah. I
to
mean, there's
put
good
her
Judy
in.
stuff throughout. She gets some of these
Yeah,
great lines, and I think maybe that's part of it. Is
I will say she
um,
probably has the best lines. I don't know, I don't think we have any reservations here, but some of them are I would hate for my kids to hear me say if they were ever listen to this, So we'll reference some of those next week if we can. Maybe we'll each sort of create a favorite Judy lines and bring them for the next episode.
all right, sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, man, next week we'll talk about season 3, Righteous Gemstones. All 9 episodes will be complete at that point. Cameron, thanks so much. We had a good time talking through this. Follow us wherever you can on the socials for the tvobsessive.com. And you can find this podcast wherever you listen to yours. We appreciate likes and reviews and replies. Thanks for doing everything here, and we're just glad to have you guys along for the ride next week. Righteous Gemstones season 3. Cameron, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, Ryan. See you next week.